High school shooting changed the lives of so many people in Santee. In 2001, 15-year-old Andy Williams opened fire on campus, killing two fellow students, 17-year-old Randy Gordon and 14-year-old Brian Zucker. He injured 13 others. Williams pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 50 years to life in prison. But instead of potential release at the age of 65, we here at CBS 8 have learned Williams is eligible for parole just 5 months from now. A change in California law states youth offenders must have a chance at parole before serving 25 years, which means Williams could be released from prison at the age of 38. It's a story we've been working on for the past 4 months. During that time, we've spoken with the mother of Brian, who was murdered. We've spoken with 8 former students, and we've talked with the shooter himself. Most of the victims tell us it is too soon, but others believe Williams deserves to be free. I sat down with people on both sides of this emotional debate. Lauren Gaines, Phil Ortiz, and Kristen Dare are former Santana High School students who were able to escape that day without being shot. They have started an online petition to keep Williams behind bars. Andy Williams is going to be up for parole in March of 2024.
Yep. So, yeah, it was in fact your team who reached out to me, and that was my first time being made aware of it.
And what went through your mind when you heard that?
You know, immediately I'd say it took over a part of me that we try to push away. You know, you try not to feel like the kid you were the day of the shooting, but I think emotionally it takes you into that headspace a little bit. So I think the 16-year-old me thought how unfair that was going to be on so many levels. And I just immediately thought of the boys who aren't here with us anymore, who lost their lives that day, that don't get this opportunity for making those decisions for their lives.
I mean, after 20 years, Randy and Brian don't get to come back from the dead. I mean, the psychological effects just don't magically wipe away after 20 years. And so people have to be held accountable for their actions. And the more we move away from that, it's going to undermine everything that we've worked for in our community for stability and justice and moral results.
At that age, you know when you're taking a life. You know what you're doing. Yes, your brain may not be fully functioning. That's not an excuse to take another life, to traumatize an entire community, to steal other children's childhood away from them. You don't get a hall pass for that.
Do you feel like your childhood was stolen from you in ways?
I do, and I feel overly protective of my children. I tell them every time they get out of the car how much I love them, because I want that to be the last thing that they hear from me. And I think about sending them to school every day, worry that something's going to happen to them, and that will never go away. So the idea of him being released early, it's just, it's not fair.
There are people who believe it's time for Williams to be free. Kaylee Anderson says a bullet that Williams fired missed him by a mere foot. Anderson now works as a San Diego County public defender, but we want to make clear his views are his own, and he is taking a personal stand in support of Williams' freedom.
I think it's astonishing that we would sentence anyone who's 15 years old to life in prison for anything. Of course, you know, you're responsible for your own actions at any age. Andy Williams is responsible for the terrible things he did on March 5th, 2001. But no child takes a gun in their hand and shoots other human beings without something else having gone terribly wrong.
Have you talked to him?
I'm going to directly very soon, but not in person yet. I'm hoping that I'm going to get to testify at his parole hearing. He's ready to be out and be a productive member of society.
What do you know about what he's done over the past 2 decades in prison?
He's done a lot of work on himself. I know that he tries when he can to talk to victims of his crime, to seek to take responsibility for it.
There's one thing these two sides do agree on. They all believe it could be helpful and healing to hear from Andy Williams himself in his own words. In a recorded phone call with CBS 8 investigative producer Dorian Hargrove, Williams shared about being bullied and sexually abused as a child. He talked about his remorse and how he spent his time in prison. Before we released any part of that conversation, we wanted to get feedback from the people Williams hurt.
Everyone's impact is different, and the way we approach healing is always different. And so I think it could possibly be helpful for some of the victims to hear his words and where he is all these years later.
If he's reflecting on his actions, and it would be nice to hear, but that will never change what happened. And justice is justice, and he needs to live out his term.
I absolutely believe he should be able to speak his mind and have a voice, but he made a choice and we have to live with our choices. And so whatever he says, I don't know that it would change my mind either.
There's gravity too to taking a human life by putting someone in a cage for, up to 50 years. There's gravity to that. And I think that they certainly have the right to speak and be heard about that.
So the mother of Brian, one of the boys who died, also told us that she would like to hear what Williams has to say. So after a lot of thought and feedback over the past 4 months, we have put a portion of that conversation with Williams on our website. If you would like to hear what Williams has to say, visit cbs8.com. We're not putting it out there right now. This way you have a choice if you'd like to listen to him or not. Also online, my full interviews with those former students. We had lengthy discussions and the link to that online petition to keep him behind bars, which already has more than 1,000 signatures, and organizers are going to take that to the state parole board.
Not a lot of people coming forward to share their story, but have you heard from other people in email or messaging that they do support the release?
In addition to Kaylee Anderson, who we interviewed, there are other people that do support Williams' release. They're not as vocal. Kaylee says it is not, the most popular opinion, but there are people that believe he was newly 15. He had just celebrated his 15th birthday, so he was 14 just a few weeks prior to that, and they really feel like he has served his time. And the reason this youth offender law was put into place is because the recidivism rate has shown that this youth offender group, when they commit such horrible crimes at such a young age, they still are able to be rehabilitated. And that recidivism rate, meaning they get put into prison again, is less than 2% for that population. So we'll have to see in March of next year what happens.
Hopefully numbers like that give people some comfort, and hopefully what he says can offer some healing in this.